Okay, so picture this, me. A terrified 7-year-old kid on my back. And our collective future is hanging, literally, on the structural integrity of 2 shoelaces from my Nikes. If my agent could see me now, he'd have a heart attack right on his yoga mat. Perfect. Just perfect. I looked at my rope, then at the abyss, then at the Alcatraz keychain carabiner. Well, at least we're on theme, I muttered. Escape from a hopeless situation. All right, kiddo, listen up. I turned to Lily, trying to make my smile look less like a nervous twitch. Time for a mission briefing for our top secret op, impossible descent. This is very important. You ready? She just stared at me, her eyes glued to mine. Rule number 1. The support agent. That's you. Trust the lead agent. That's me, completely. Even if the lead agent is doing something incredibly weird. I gave her makeshift harness a little pat. Rule number 2. The lead agent is the only one who looks down. That's my job. It's boring. Your job is way more important. You are Koala Commando. Your mission is to hold on to me like I'm the last slice of pizza on the planet. Think you can handle that? A tiny shadow of a smile flickered across her face. Like a koala, she whispered. That's the spirit. You're the best Koala Commando I've ever seen. I encouraged her, while thinking that we both are going to need a therapist after this day. I got her situated on my back, making sure her injured leg wasn't dangling. She wrapped her arms around my neck and her legs around my waist. A tiny, trembling life that now depended entirely on me and my shoelaces. I took a deep breath, smelling ozone and fear. Team Koala is a go for launch. I pushed off the ledge. That moment stretched into infinity. The second my feet left solid ground, and our entire weight, mine, hers, and the weight of our sins, crashed down on those thin nylon threads. There was a horrible sound, not a creak or a snap, but a quiet, protesting groan, like the very soul of the material was being stretched to its absolute limit. I froze, dangling in midair, praying the tree would hold, the knots wouldn't slip, and the Alcatraz carabiner wasn't a cheap Chinese knockoff. We were hanging. 1 second. 2. 3. The line held. Holy crap, it held. See? Totally under control. I lied. The descent began. I felt like the world's clumsiest Spider-Man. My hands were on fire, like I was sliding down a hot wire. Every few feet, I'd pause to catch my breath and mentally apologize to Nike for this barbaric misuse of their product. And of course, just when you think things can't get any worse, the universe says, hold my beer. Our rope got stuck. Just wedged itself in a sharp V-shaped crack in the rock. Of course it did. The day was going too smoothly. I was starting to worry. We stopped with a jolt that nearly made us swing into each other. I looked up and saw the taut fibers of our lifeline rubbing against the sharp granite edge. A few more moves, and they would shred. Oh, was all I could say. Okay, Koala Commando, slight change of plans. Time for some improv, I said, while my brain frantically cycled through all the bad ideas I could think of. Yank it. No, the laces would snap. Try to reach it? Not a chance. And then, another insane plan was born. Plan B. Or rather, Plan P, for pendulum. Lily, I said, my voice suddenly serious. You like swings? We're about to do something like that. But with more screaming and a real possibility of hitting a wall. I need you to hold on even tighter. The tightest you've ever held on in your life. Got it. She just squeezed my neck harder. That was her answer. I kicked off the rock face as hard as I could, sideways. We flew out, parallel to the cliff. It was a wild feeling. Freedom, panic, and a complete lack of understanding of what I was doing. Then gravity grabbed us again and pulled us back toward the rock. Hard. I only had time to yell brace before we slammed into the wall. I took the full impact myself, feeling the rock scrape my back and shoulder. Pain shot through my body, but I heard what I was hoping for. A dull thwomp as the rope popped free from the trap. It was free. Yes. I yelled. See? Told you it would be fun. What pain? What wall? Results are what matter. I was definitely going to have a bruise the size of Texas, but it was a win. A painful win. The rest of the way down was a marathon of pain and concentration. I stopped talking. All my energy went into controlling our speed, into not giving our mangled shoelaces a single chance to break. I could see the ground getting closer, but those last 100 feet felt longer than the entire journey. And then, my feet touched scree, then solid rock. I was on the ground, at the bottom of the canyon. Carefully, as if she were made of glass, I lowered Lily to the ground. I stood there, swaying, looking at my hands. They were raw and bleeding. I looked up at the path we'd taken. From down here, it looked completely impossible. I'd done it. We'd done it. But looking at the dark shadows gathering around us, I knew this was only the first act of our drama. And the hardest part was still ahead. Part 2. A walk in the dark and a very grumpy ranger. So, we're on the ground. Hooray. Applause. Curtain. But no, this isn't a movie. This is reality. And in reality, as soon as you solve one giant problem, another one immediately falls on your head. Our new problem was the night. Not just dark, but a thick, inky, all-consuming darkness you could film a horror movie in with no extra lighting. And the cold. It had crept up on us, but now it bit into us with its icy teeth and wouldn't let go. All right, Koala Commando, no time to relax, I said, trying to stop my own teeth from chattering. Next phase of our mission is called Find Civilization, or at least a place with hot tea. You with me? Lily just burrowed deeper into my jacket. Her shivering had stopped, and, having taken a few first aid courses for particularly explosive scenes, I knew that was a very, very bad sign. It meant her little body was starting to give up, to conserve energy. The clock was ticking, not in hours, but in minutes. I scooped her up. She was almost weightless. I looked around. Directions? What directions? All around us were just black silhouettes of trees and rocks. I remembered all the survival movies I'd ever seen. You have to go downhill, toward water. Water always flows somewhere. Usually, toward people who like to build their houses near water. Seemed logical. I heard the faint gurgle of a stream and headed for the sound like it was a lighthouse. And so we walked. Or rather, I walked, carrying her. Every step was torture. My legs, after the descent, felt like 2 pieces of cooked spaghetti. I kept tripping over roots that seemed to deliberately pop out of the ground in the dark just to get me. Every time I fell, I tried to twist my body to land on my long-suffering back, protecting Lily. After the 3rd fall, I started talking to the roots. Seriously? You again? Do we have a problem? To keep Lily from passing out, and frankly, to keep myself from going crazy from the silence and pain, I started talking. I told her everything. About my dog, who was probably at home sleeping on silk pillows, completely unaware of my adventures. About the time I had to eat real insects on a movie set. They're not bad, by the way, if you add enough sauce. Crunchy, like potato chips. But I wouldn't recommend it. I tried to joke, but my voice sounded hoarse and pathetic. Time lost all meaning. It could have been an hour, or it could have been 5. The forest became an endless labyrinth of trees and stones. My optimism was running on fumes. I could feel my strength leaving me. I sat down under a huge pine tree to catch my breath. Lily was breathing quietly against my neck. Hang in there, kid, I whispered. I made you a promise. And I keep my promises. Usually. I closed my eyes for a second, and my agent's face appeared before me. He was standing with his arms crossed, shaking his head disapprovingly. Tom, I asked you. A quiet hobby. Gardening. Stamp collecting. Not all this. This imaginary scolding somehow gave me strength. I stood up. All right, I get it. No more mountains. I yelled into the darkness. And at that exact moment, when I was on the verge of complete despair, I saw it. A light. A small, warm, yellow dot in the distance. I froze. Was I hallucinating? I closed my eyes, then opened them again. The light was still there. It was real. It was a light in a window. It was civilization. I don't remember how I ran. I think I just flew, feeling no pain, no fatigue. Adrenaline hit my system again like a double espresso. I burst out of the forest into a clearing. There stood a small wooden house. A ranger station. I ran to the door and started pounding on it with my hands and feet, yelling something incoherent like, help, kid, shoelaces. The door opened. On the threshold stood a huge, bearded man in a ranger uniform. He looked at me, at the child in my arms, then back at me. His expression was one of pure annoyance. Look, buddy, he said in a tired voice. We know you tourists like your pranks, but it's 3 a.m. Go sleep it off. And he started to close the door. I couldn't believe my ears. I had just had the worst day of my life, risked everything to save a child, and this bearded giant thinks I'm joking? Oh no. My inner Ethan Hunt, tired and angry, took control. I stuck my foot in the door. Listen to me, buddy, I growled through my teeth. If you don't open this door right now and call for help, I will do things to your station that I've never even done to a movie set. This girl has hypothermia and a possible fracture. And I am in a very, very bad mood. Do you understand me? Maybe it was my voice. Maybe it was the crazed look in my eyes. Or maybe he finally got a good look at Lily's pale face. But his expression changed. He threw the door open. My God, get in quick, he said, and I knew that the second act of our drama was finally over. And maybe, just maybe, that hot tea was waiting in the finale. Part 3. Helicopters, heroes, and a very disappointed agent. Warmth. The first thing I felt when I stepped inside was a blessed, heavenly warmth. I felt like I could just lie down on the floor and sleep until next Christmas. But there was no time to relax. The Ranger, whose name turned out to be Hank, switched from grumpy bear mode to panic professional mode in 3 seconds flat. Sarah, he roared into the back of the house. We have a code very bad out here. Drop your report, I need you. A young female ranger, significantly less bearded than Hank, ran out of a back room with a look on her face that said, I got this. She gave us a professional once-over, and while Hank was getting the fireplace roaring, she was already unpacking a first aid kit and yelling into a two-way radio about a helicopter, a fracture, and hypothermia. I felt like an extra in my own movie. They sat me down in a chair while they worked on Lily. They gently unwrapped her from my jacket, bundled her in 3 wool blankets, and started giving her warm sugar water. I just sat and watched, feeling my muscles turn to jello. All right, buddy, talk, Hank said, sitting across from me while Sarah continued her radio call. What the hell happened? You look like you were chewed up and spit out by a grizzly. I tried to smile. A bear would have been more humane. Let's just say we had a minor disagreement with gravity. And gravity almost won. Is that Lily Anderson? Sarah asked, covering the mic with her palm. She's been missing since this afternoon. Her parents are losing their minds. How did you find her? She found me, I replied. She has a very loud and pathetic cry. I recommend it as an alarm system. Hank stared at me with his stern eyes. She was on the east ledge, wasn't she? Below the needle? I nodded. He frowned even more. But that's a dead end. It's a sheer cliff. How'd you get down? Here came my favorite part. I paused for dramatic effect. It's a long story that starts with my boots. They both stared at me. I sighed. Long story short, there was no rope. So I used my shoelaces. Tied them together, made a harness out of her jacket, clipped her to me with a keychain carabiner, and rappelled down the cliff. Silence. The only sounds in the room were the crackling of the fire and the squawk of the radio. Hank was looking at me like I had just told him I'd arrived on a pony from the moon. He slowly lowered his gaze to my feet, to my hiking boots with no shoelaces, then back to my face. His brain was apparently trying to process this information, but kept getting a 404 error. You. What? He finally managed to say. He used his shoelaces, Sarah said, a weird mix of horror and fascination in her voice. Hank, he rappelled down the widow's cry on shoelaces. That's impossible, Hank whispered. I thought so too, I said. But when the choice is between impossible and freezing to death on a rock, you start to get creative. Just then, the roar of a helicopter vibrated through the cabin. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The door burst open, and 2 paramedics rushed in. They took control with professional speed. As they were carrying Lily out on a stretcher to the helicopter, she suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze found mine. Tom, she whispered. I'm here, Koala Commando, I said, stepping closer. She gave a weak smile. You know, you're way cooler than Captain Marvel. And she closed her eyes. That was it. In that moment, I knew that all the Oscars in the world weren't worth those few words. I stood there watching the helicopter lift into the sky, feeling the adrenaline that had kept me going for the last day finally evaporate. I swayed and almost fell. Hey, buddy, you're barely standing, Sarah said, grabbing my arm. Your hands are hamburger meat. And your back, my God, you're a mess. Only now did I feel the pain. A dull, throbbing ache in every single muscle. It's nothing, I croaked. My real loss is a perfectly good pair of shoelaces. They were almost new. Hank walked over to me. The look on his face had changed. The annoyance and disbelief were gone. All that was left was a quiet respect. He stuck out his hand. I don't know who you are, son, he said, giving my hand a firm shake. But you are either the luckiest or the craziest son of a bitch I have ever met. Usually both, I replied. When all the chaos was over and I was left alone with a cup of tea that was burning my raw palms, I pulled out my phone. Amazingly, I had 1 bar of service. There was one unread text message on the screen. From my agent. Sent last night. I opened it. It read, "Hope you're having a great time and enjoying the peace and quiet. Just please, don't do anything crazy." Winky face. I looked at my hands, at my clothes that were now just filthy rags, and I laughed. Quietly and hoarsely at first, then louder. I laughed harder than I had in a very long time. Yeah, the vacation was a real success. I'd have to send Hank a new pair of shoelaces. He'd earn them. Finale, publicity, shoelaces, and a very weird vacation. I woke up on a couch that felt like it was stuffed with rocks and old regrets. My back was screaming SOS, and my mouth was so dry I felt like I tried to eat a desert. Across from me, Hank was drinking coffee from a mug the size of my head. He was looking at me like I was an exhibit in a museum of oddities. "Well, look who's awake, Sleeping Beauty," he grunted. "You've got visitors. The sheriff wants you to fill out some paperwork." Oh, great. Paperwork. My favorite. The sheriff came in, a short, mustachioed man who looked like he'd just walked out of a Western. He handed me an official incident report form. I looked at the fields. Reason for deviating from marked trail. What was I supposed to write? Heard a pathetic whimper, and my inner hero decided a relaxing vacation is for wimps. I wrote, child rescue. Next field, equipment used. I had to think about this one. I could already see the headlines. I wrote, hiking boots, 2, laces missing, nylon shoelaces, 2, tied together, souvenir carabiner, 1, panic, unlimited supply. The sheriff read it, looked at me, read it again, and silently took the form back. I think he decided I'd been through enough for one day. A call came from the hospital. Lily was stable. A broken leg, a concussion, and severe hypothermia. But the main thing was, she was going to live. The doctor asked a lot of questions about what happened, and when I got to the part about the shoelaces, there was such a long silence on the other end that I thought we'd been disconnected. Then the doctor said uncertainly, I'll put that in her medical chart. Probably in the fun facts section. Soon after, Lily's parents arrived. They blew into the station like a hurricane. The mother hugged me and cried. The father shook my hand so hard I was afraid for my fingers. They thanked me, called me a hero, a guardian angel. It was awkward. I'm not used to that kind of raw, unfiltered emotion. I just mumbled something back about how anyone would have done the same, even though I knew perfectly well that most people, at the very least, would have brought a rope. I'm sorry, the father said suddenly, staring at me intently. Don't I know you from somewhere? Yep, Hank cut in, clapping me on the shoulder. That's him, the guy from TV who decided professional climbing gear is for posers. Lily's dad's mouth fell open. So, you, Tom Cruise, lowered my daughter down a cliff with your shoelaces? From my hiking boots, I corrected him. They're much more durable. I highly recommend the brand. Just then, the first news van from a local TV station appeared outside. My time here was up. As if by magic, a black SUV pulled up to the station, and a silent man in a suit got out, holding a bag with fresh clothes. My agent worked fast. Looks like your invisibility cloak is here, Sarah smiled. She and Hank led me to the back door. Thank you, I said, shaking their hands. For everything. No, thank you, son, Hank replied. You gave us a story we'll be telling our grandkids. Just next time you want to relax, try fishing. The worst thing that can happen there is you get your feet wet. I got in the car. It smelled of new leather and peace. I changed into the clean clothes and leaned back in the seat, watching the mountains roll by outside the window. They didn't seem so hostile anymore. They were just mountains. I looked at my bandaged palms. It had been the craziest, scariest, and probably the best day of my life. No stunt, no scene could compare to this feeling. The feeling that you did something real. My phone rang. The agent. I picked up. Thomas Cruise Maypother IV. A voice screamed so loud the driver flinched. Are you out of your mind? Shoelaces. I nearly swallowed my Stairmaster when I read the news. The publicity is insane. Of course, your Mother Teresa and Spider-Man rolled into one now. But don't you ever let me hear about something like this again. He yelled for another 5 minutes. I listened silently, a smile on my face. When he finally ran out of breath, I said, yeah, I missed you too. Listen, I have one request. Order me a new pair of hiking boots, would you? Same brand. And you know what? Add 50 meters of professional climbing rope to the order. Why? The agent asked in horror. Just in case, I said, looking out at the mountain peaks. For my next relaxing vacation.